Folks, this is Book Talk with Corbin. I am your host, and we have a first-time guest with us, Richard Ennis. He's the education analyst at the Bluegrass Institute. And let me tell you guys something. You need to carefully listen to what this man is about to tell you, what he's about to share with us. You need to take notes. We will get the Bluegrass Institute's website, so you can go there and get more information. But what he's about to tell you is important and disturbing. If you're a resident of the Commonwealth of Kentucky and you're really if you're concerned, truly concerned about our young people and our future in this state, you better listen to what this man's got to say. Brother, thank you so much for coming, spending your time with us, and sharing your information with us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's start off by, you have something to say about the test scores, students' test scores. What do you have to share with us on that?
Well, we have a lot to talk about with test scores, unfortunately. Everybody knows, I think, at least intuitively, that COVID has not been good for education, and an education system that was already faltering, and I'll show you some evidence of that in a minute, but an education system that was already faltering certainly has not improved under the impacts of COVID, with kids locked out of their brick and mortar classrooms for the better part of a year or more, and other disruptions that go on even now with things like masking and massive confusion about, will my child be going to school tomorrow or will he be in quarantine? None of that's been good. It's upset the children as well, of course, and it shows up in the test scores. We're not doing very well. I think one of the most shocking bits of evidence to come out with the brand new test scores from the state testing program, which everybody has called K-Prep, but they just renamed it. It's now the Kentucky Summative Assessments, KSAs. That was released in October, and during the discussion with the Board of Education, they showed a slide for elementary school performance that really got my attention. On the slide, they show the test scores for different groups of students for both reading and mathematics. And what really bothered me was that the lowest scores for both reading and mathematics in elementary schools across the state of Kentucky in 2021 didn't come from the kids with learning disabilities, who traditionally would be the ones you would expect to score the lowest. In fact, for both reading and math, African American students in Kentucky's public school system had even lower proficiency rates than the students with learning disabilities. That's just plain shocking.
Yes.
And just not acceptable. That's right out of the briefing that was given to the State Board of Education. And to my dismay at the time, and the board gets a lot of stuff thrown at it in their one-day meetings, but nobody picked up on it. I noticed it right away, but none of the board members even raised this issue as a question. And I certainly hope going forward that more attention is going to be paid to this shocking example of how poor a job we have done for children of color in the Kentucky public school system. And yeah, it pertains to Jefferson County as well, statewide. Jefferson County, the last time I looked, actually has more than a third of all of the African American public school students in the state in the JCPS system. So when we talk about scores statewide, that's also really pointing at Jefferson County in just about every case as well, if we're talking about
Let me ask you this real quick, brother. So at that particular meeting where you received those stats, no one really questioned the board about that. No one questioned, hey, what's up with that? Why is that?
I don't recall hearing the board members ask any questions. Now, I might have missed it. I was watching on the web because all those meetings have been closed until recently, and it's more convenient for me living in northern Kentucky to just log in through the web.
Sure.
But I had the slides sent to me by the Department of Education after the meeting just to confirm that I had seen what I thought I saw correctly on screen.
Mm.
And there it was. If someone made a discussion about it, it was short and certainly didn't make any impact on me that, hey, this is just really unacceptable. What's going on here? Let's wake up and do something. So that's the first piece of evidence, and it comes from our own state testing program. By the way, our state testing program didn't get very good participation from students. Technically, they're all supposed to take the test, but because of the disruption of COVID, the participation of students was far less than 100%. Mm. And in fact, it varied quite a bit by race, with African-American students, in some cases, having far fewer students, proportionately speaking, taking the test than, say, whites did, or surprisingly, learning disabled kids who showed up in a pretty high percentage on some of the stuff I'll talk about in just a minute. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't even in a way. You really can't compare the scores to previous years, because in previous years we tested everybody. Now we don't know how the kids who didn't show up would do if they'd taken a test. I suspect they would test low, because the kids who don't show up are generally the ones that didn't get any education throughout the year anyway. And we know about 10% didn't show, period. Mm. So it's likely that the proficiency rates that were reported are higher than they truly would be if the entire group of students had been tested, but they weren't. So there's a limit to the test scores. Now, we also, as you probably know, test all of our 11th grade students every year with the ACT College Entrance Test. And on a 2-year cycle, we have been testing our students with another test, a federal test called the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Everybody calls it the NAEP from its initials, NAEP. And so next, let's talk a little bit about this federal test, which is a very highly regarded test. And it was last given in 2019 before COVID hit. It was going to be given in 2021, but they had to cancel because everybody was out of school and there were no kids to test that they could get access to.
Right.
Here again, we have actually a long history from the NAEP for both 4th and 8th grade for reading and mathematics for both our white students and our African-American kids. And I have the data according to one of the ways they report it, which is by the number of students who score at or above what the NAEP determines to be a proficient performance for reading. They actually have 4 score levels they report. There's a proficient level, and then there's an advanced level, which is even better than proficient. Not very many kids get into that level. And then there's 2 other levels. The next level below proficient is called basic. And the NAEP documentation tells us that students who score basic only have a partial mastery of the subject. And then they have the last category, which is the worst category, which is below basic. And kids who score at the below basic level probably can't read much at all, if at all. I mean, it's less than just a partial mastery. So that's the way NAEP's set up. But I have data on the kids who scored at or above proficient by year. And for our African-American students in particular, this is not happy news, especially for reading. I'm looking at the reading rates for the African-American students in 4th grade. Now, way back in 1992, only 8% of the African-American students in Kentucky's 4th grade tested proficient or above for reading. Reading is a crucial subject. And by the 4th grade, kids need to be reading well, because our school system is set up where we teach reading in grades kindergarten through 3. But by the 4th grade, we are assuming the kids are now reading and can read on their own to learn, can read a textbook and understand it. So now kids are reading to learn. But if they can't read, they're not going to get much learning. And it's going to be that way for the entire remainder of their school career, all the way up through 12th grade.
And you say this is 8%. You say this is assumed by the 4th grade. Hey, you should be able to read, and now you're reading to learn. You're not learning to read, but you're reading to learn.
That's right.
Okay.
And systems all across the country are set up that way. It's the way the
Okay.
textbooks are written and everything. Okay, flash forward to the latest 2019 results from the NAEP grade 4 reading for Kentucky's African American kids. And it only moved from 8% to 14%, according to the reported numbers. But there's a kicker. This is a sampled assessment. Not every kid in the state takes it. In fact, only about 3,000 kids total out of a group that runs class size now upwards around 50,000 take this test. So this is those plus or minus sampling errors, just like you're used to hearing about when we hear about how voters are going to vote in an election. Everybody's heard that. Same thing applies here. Once we allow for that sampling error in that 14% proficiency score, it is not statistically significantly different from the score all the way back in 1992, almost 3 decades of no detectable progress, according to the NAEP, for our African American kids. Now, our white kids did a little better, but they have not done very well recently either. From 2007 to the present 2019 results, white kids have also been flat. They were 36% proficient in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
The latest results for 2019, they were only 39% proficient. So not much more than 1 out of 3 of our white kids are reading proficiently. But what's worse for the white kids is they definitely showed a statistically significant decline in their reading performance between 2015 and 2019. They actually hit their peak in 2015 when they were 44% proficient. Now they have slid back down to 39%. Black scores also show a decline, but because of the sampling error, we can't say it's statistically significant. The black scores dropped almost 10 points. White scores dropped 5 points. And because there's more whites, the sampling error is lower for them. So both whites and blacks show disturbing evidence that since 2015, reading performance in the state has actually declined. And the blacks are so low anyway, it's almost like hardly any of them read, scarcely more than 1 in 10.
Before you continue, let me just say this. Folks, this is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm speaking with Richard Ennis. He's the education analyst at Bluegrass Institute. And we'll have his interview and other interviews that we've done with people talking about the state of education in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Go to my website, booktalkwithcorbin, CORBIN.com. Okay, brother, we just got a few more minutes. We're definitely going to have to bring you back for another episode. You told me beforehand you thought that this would be the case. But man, when I just listened to all that you said, and I even took notes, I said, yeah, he nailed it. We definitely got to bring you back again and to tell us more, share with us the other, unfortunately, bad news you have to share with us. Brother, let me ask you this in conclusion. What do you're looking at the code stats, the numbers. Why do you think this is happening, these low reading scores? Why do you think this is happening?
That is a wonderful question that we're doing a lot of work on at the Bluegrass Institute. To be very blunt and direct, unfortunately, it looks like a lot of teachers in the state of Kentucky have been given incorrect information about how to teach reading, and they simply do not know how to do it, and the test scores for reading reflect it. But it doesn't need to be that way. Some of our research looking at other states shows that they're doing it much better because other states are now starting to require all of their teachers to learn about what scientific research shows actually works best for teaching reading. Believe it or not, in our state, that is not a requirement. And a lot of the things our teachers in Kentucky have been taught, and they believe with a faith belief system that I don't understand when they continue to produce such low reading results. They simply don't know, and there's not any effort really going on statewide to improve the situation. But it doesn't need to be that way. Believe it or not, the state of Mississippi got onto the fact that their teachers were in the same situation And in 2015, they started a program